This is the last part of the road trip series. The last couple of weeks, we have literally been on a road trip. We've been outside at the Frisco Rail Yard. We talked about what it means to pack for life's journey. Make sure you pack everything you're going to need. So we talked about packing in your coat and packing in your swimsuit, and we didn't have to wear our swimsuits, but we could have. The first week it was, in the high 80s, and we sweated a little bit as we worshiped. And then the next week we needed our coats because it was a little chilly at 60 degrees and breezy. And so we learned the importance of having a full wardrobe with us on life's journeys. And we talked about how important it is to pack. We also talked about how important it is to have a map that's going to guide us and take us to where we want to go. And then today, we're talking about the end of the road trip series, kind of as we get towards the end of our journey, being able to look back and some wisdom that comes from the journey and looking back at memories that were made and things that we saw and places that we went and all of that, because that's part of a good road trip, right? Seeing things and doing things. You don't just drive the entire time. You want to have some memories that you make. And so a lot of times when we get on the road trip, what do we do while we're on the road? We don't just drive. We get out, we walk around, we see the sights, and we take pictures, right? We make some memories, and these are reminders to us later. Look at these pictures, kids. This is when we went to... And then you name the place. And this is when we went there, and look how little you were, and look how young that we were, and all those things. And so you remember because of the pictures that you took. Back in the day, my grandparents, they'd bring home slides, and they'd put them on their projector, and they'd pull out the little pop-up screen, and they'd turn it on, and it made, had like this little mechanical noise, and the younger generation has no idea what I'm talking about. But there was a projector and a screen, and you just kind of click through the slideshow, and every time somebody went on vacation, you had to sit for the slideshow. And now we've kind of moved beyond that, and we get into photo albums. I have some old photo albums where you actually had to take physical pictures and tape them in or glue them into place, and those are always fun to go through. But now we have books that you can print, from files you have on your computer, so if you want an actual book. But a lot of times now it's Instagram and Facebook Reels and stories that you share. But whatever the case, we always like to share where we are and what we've done. We like to share what we've experienced and what we've seen and share that with everybody else. And that's part of life. That's it's an important part of life. And as we compare that to our life's journey of faith, it's important to share moments of faith. It's important to have those memories that you can recall. It's important to pass your faith on to other generations. Amen? Yeah, it is. I know I just made a really quick spiritual turn there, but I caught you by surprise. But yeah, it's important to have memories in your faith walk, memories in your life's journeys that you can share, stories that you can tell over and over again to put it into the next generation, but also to remind you and to build your faith of what's coming ahead. And so that's all important. But today, I want to focus on one aspect of a road trip that's kind of like, where did we go and what did we see that maybe you don't really think about. You probably noticed it, but you didn't really notice it. You know what I mean? And that is, and it's something that's pretty important, and that is the signs that we see. Specifically, signs that tell you when you're crossing from one border into another border, like you're changing states, right? So one of the things that I like to do is we have kids that are 8 and 11 years old, and so as we drive through places, they're interested when we pass from one state to the next. And my favorite sign of all is "Welcome to Texas." That means I'm coming back home. Yeah. There's something about being in Texas. It's my favorite country in the whole United States. And it's great. And so I love Texas. And so when I see that sign, "Welcome to Texas," I think, yeehaw, I'm home. Here we are. Let's go home and get in my own bed and sit on my own couch, watch my own TV, eat my own food out of my own refrigerator. I mean, there's just something about that. Yes, I mean, and we're all going to take summer trips and this kind of thing. So we're all going to experience that in the coming weeks. I get that. Another favorite one is when we pass into Louisiana, because I still have family that lives in Louisiana when we do that. That one's a little different because Louisiana speaks French, and so when you read their sign, you have to do it with kind of a little French accent, bienvenue à Louisiane, and so it's like, oh yeah, I'm kind of passing through the border here, and I'm crossing into a different area where the language is a little different, the culture is a little different, the governance is a little different. Everything's a little bit different when you cross into Louisiana, and then maybe you go up and you go into Arkansas, right? So you see, welcome to Arkansas. I'm not gonna mimic the accent, but maybe you read it in an Arkansas voice, whatever that might be. We have some people from Arkansas I'm picking on. And then maybe you go up into Oklahoma. Oklahoma's one of my favorite ones to go into because that one, I just sing it when I see it. Welcome to Oklahoma. I do it. This is kind of fun. You know what I mean? Yeah. Some of you sing the musical, you know what I'm talking about. What's fun is, I don't know if you do that, but I like to do that because our kids are with us and we'll count down. Wow, here we go. We're about to cross into Texas, 5, 4, 3, 2, and step on the gas. 1, we're home, It's great, it's fun. Boundary signs let you know where one state ends and where another state begins. And if you leave the country, when you get to the other country, there's signs telling you which country you're in. You have left the United States and now you're in this other country. And that's important to know because you need to know what laws you're going to have to follow. You need to know who's in charge of the area that you're walking into. You need to kind of know how to behave yourself, okay? So when I've been abroad and I've had the privilege of traveling to other countries, and I'll never forget the first time that I flew into the country of Lithuania, and I had a bunch of cargo that I was taking to. It was basically Bible studies and things that I was, and school work that I was bringing to some missionary friends that we have there, and so I was wheeling this in, and as we pulled into the airport, it looks different. Okay, feels different. It's in a very different kind of country, a country that was under Soviet rule for about 50 years and had only recently become free. And so I'm wheeling into the airport with me and the youth pastor at the time, and we both got giant suitcases. We got our own suitcase, and we both have giant suitcases that are packed, like literally packed to the zippers falling off with books, okay, schoolwork. And as we're rolling past, and there's a guard there with a submachine gun standing there, and he waves at us. Come over this way, and I'm like, oh no. I'm not in the United States anymore. I walk over and he begins to speak to us, and we're like, I have no idea what you're saying. And so he, in broken English, he wants us to open the suitcases. He wants to see what's inside, and then he wants to know what is all this and how much is this worth? Because now he's going to try to exact some money from us. Okay, because we're bringing, and we're like, this is worth like, I don't know, $50. I have no idea what it's worth, okay? And we were able to somehow convince him it wasn't really worth his time or effort, and we were able to pass on through. But, you get a little concerned when you get into places like that, and you get kind of pulled aside by the authorities because you're in a different place. You crossed a boundary. You're not home anymore. And you're under different laws, and it's a little bit different, and maybe it can be fun and exciting, but it can also be a little bit disconcerting as well. And so borders are important. They let you know when you cross from one to the other, and boundaries are important. And you can imagine the confusion if there were no borders, like if you didn't know that you had crossed into another country. And all of a sudden you're held accountable. It's like, whoa, I didn't even know, right? And so you can imagine the confusion if the borders changed all the time. Like one day the border stopped here, but then next week it's way over there. And so you thought, well, I was where I wanted to be, but now I woke up and I'm in a different country. I'm in a different state. Well, what's going on here? The borders need to stay very stable. We want to have borders. We want to have landmarks. We want to have things that say this demarcates one area from another, because otherwise you have confusion. You don't want to be across the border when trouble comes. Like if you're overseas and you have a medical condition, or you're overseas and something happens in the world news, you don't want to be overseas. You want to be back home. You want to be with your doctor. You want to be next to your hospital. You want to be under your laws and your military and all this, okay? So you know what I mean. You can just imagine. So when you travel abroad, there's always a chance that something takes place. And so there's always this, I'm not at home. But then when you come back home, it's like you kind of want to kiss the ground that you walked in on. Don't do it. It's unsanitary. But you kind of want to. When you get home, you're like, yes, I love being home. I love when I arrive back in the United States and I see that familiar flag. I see the familiar signs. And, of course, today is Memorial Day, and we want to appreciate those who gave their lives for this country. The reason that we can feel that way when we come home is because, well, it wasn't free, because a lot of somebodies gave their lives for the freedoms that we have. And because of that, when we come home, we can experience a sense of peace. Like, yes, I'm home. I'm in my own borders. I'm in my own boundaries. I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm where I'm comfortable. I'm at peace. There's something about being within those boundaries. And God takes boundaries seriously. You know, the Bible says that God has actually ordained the boundaries of the nations. God actually has decided where the nations will stop and start. He's determined ahead of time where the states would be. He's already determined where the bounds of your home would be. He's already laid all that out. He's not surprised by any of those things because that's part of his plan. And in fact, God took borders and boundaries very seriously. Sometimes the border was a river. He would say the land of this family is going to go from this mountain range to this river. Sometimes it was a large stone that would place out in the middle of a field somewhere. These large stones were known as landmark stones. And they marked the end of one territory and the beginning of another. And God said, this is going to show who's responsible for this part of the land and who's responsible for that part of the land, and I don't want you moving the ancient landmarks. They need to stay here. I've established these boundaries. I've established this marker. I don't want it to change. I don't want you to change it. I want you to defend against somebody else that would change it. Okay, they need to stay right where they are because this is what I have ordained. In fact, in Deuteronomy 19, we're reading about the laws, the various laws of Israel. One of the laws was this, Deuteronomy 19:14. You shall not move your neighbor's landmark. You're not going to go out and say, I need to make my farm a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to roll this stone a little bit further that way. Okay, you can't do that. You're not going to do that. You're not going to move your neighbor's landmark, which men of old have set. This has been there a long time. You don't need to change it. It's your inheritance that you're going to hold in the land the Lord your God has given you to possess. God has decided where the boundary is going to be. You don't get to move it. And it was set there a long time ago, and so it's against the law to actually change where that boundary is. And then Proverbs 22 and 28, in the book of wisdom we read, do not move the ancient landmark that your fathers have set. There's more passages like that, but the concept is the same. There were some things that have been put in place a very long time ago, some boundaries, some rules, some borders, some thoughts, some ideas that were put there and ordained by God, and they cannot be changed. They should not be changed. And if you change them, you're breaking the law. If you change them, you're going against the way that God has set things in motion. And there are some things in life that must never change. You know, if you don't have proper boundaries in life, then your life will be very unstable. Who likes instability in life? Anybody like instability in life? Raise your hand. No? Nobody likes instability. We like our lives to be predictable and stable, and we don't like a lot of surprises. Okay? Well, one of the ways you make your life stable is to know where the boundaries are in your life and where those boundaries are and where they will never change. Okay? You've got to have some things in your life that will not change, some bedrock things that say this is the boundary that God has placed and I will not move it, because God has a way for us to live. He has a place for you to live, and you'll move from place to place on this, but I'm speaking spiritually. God has a way for us to live, and if we will heed it, we will live well. And I'm speaking spiritually. And it's not your way. It's not your boundary. It's not your borders that you create. It's actually an old border. It's actually an old way. It's not a road that you make. It's a road that God has made. He is the one that has decided it. And you say, well, you know, I know today people want to go their own way. People want to do their own thing. People want to do life their way. They don't want to listen to the rules. They want to make up the rules as they go along. That's actually not a modern thing. That's actually an ancient thing. Look in the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 16, this is what the Lord is saying through this prophet. He's speaking to Israel, and he says, stand by the roads, because sometimes the roads were a border and a boundary too. Stand by the roads and look, and ask for the ancient path. Ask, where is that old road? Where is that ancient road? Where's the road that my forefathers laid down? Where's the road that God told them to build? Where is that road? Where the good way is, and walk in it and find rest for your souls. I mean, we like rest. God says if you'll ask for the ancient path, the one that I laid down, if you'll ask for the good way, if you'll ask for the place where your forefathers walked with me, then you'll find rest for your soul. But they said, we will not walk in it. We want our own way. We want our own road. We want to make our own borders. We want to move some things around. We want to shake things up. We want to do things different. And the Lord says, you'll find rest if you do it my way. What do you think the opposite of that is? Unrest, turmoil, trouble. Yes. I read an interesting story about the nation of Japan, a place that I would like to go one day. I've never had the opportunity to go. But in Japan, of course, it's an island country, and as an island country, they have to deal with tsunamis. You familiar with what a tsunami is? A tsunami is a giant wave that takes place when there's been an earthquake at sea. And they can be quite destructive and take many lives. And so Japan, over the centuries, has been buffeted by tsunamis here and there. Okay, there's been times in history where giant tsunamis come in and cause lots of damage. And research has shown that, and this is not just in Japan but everywhere, that in the human mind, that it takes about 3 generations for the memory of a disaster to disappear. Okay, without a written, now if you have a written record, that helps a lot. Okay, then people don't tend to forget as easily. But if there's nothing written down, it only takes about 3 generations for something bad to be purged from the memory of the families. Okay, now you think back, think about your own family. You go back 1 generation, 2 generations. You probably don't know all the terrible things that happened to your great-great-grandparents, and some of the, maybe a couple of things. And then the next generation won't know anything about those things, okay? So unless something is written down, unless you take steps to share what happened and why, it doesn't take very long for the generations to forget the terrible things that can happen. And the same thing is true of tsunamis. And so the Japanese people realized this early on, and so what they did was they said, look, the tsunamis, they don't come every year. They don't come every decade. Okay? Sometimes they come once a generation or once every 3 or 4 generations. So what can we do about this? So they created a system of what they call tsunami stones. These are large stones, large rocks that have engraved on them a message. And it says, and it has the year, okay? In this year, a tsunami came this far. Don't build below this, because all around Japan is a beach. And in the middle, it's raised because it's an island in the middle of the ocean. So don't build your houses too close to the beach. In fact, build them this high up or beyond, because if you build down here, there's a chance a tsunami could come and wipe it all away. Tsunami stones. So that's kind of interesting. Now, some of these stones are like 600 years old. So they're hard to find because they're all overgrown or weathered or chipped or faded. And so sometimes people will build below them and not realize it. And so back in 2011, not very long ago, in 2011, there was a tsunami that hit the coast of Japan. And in this tsunami, there was a particular village called Anayoshi. And Anayoshi had some tsunami stones. And their particular tsunami stone said, look, back in 1933, there was a tsunami that came. So almost 100 years prior. There was a tsunami. There was a tsunami that came and wiped out everybody but 4 residents of this town. And they have a stone that says how far the tsunami came. And so in 2011, when there was a tsunami warning, all the residents were able to go past the tsunami stone, and they survived because they were following something that had been put down almost 100 years prior. But in other cities, people stayed. And over 18,000 people died because they didn't know where their tsunami stones were. They had built seawalls that they thought that would protect them. They weren't interested in the old paths. They weren't interested in following the old instructions. They said, we've done our own thing. We've done it our way, and we think that will protect us. And they did not heed the voice of the past. And 18,000 people perished in 2011. Well, God has given us some boundary stones. God has given us some borders. God has given us some tsunami stones for life. That says, look, you can go out into life. You can go and you can adventure and you can explore and you can learn and you can experience. But you'd better watch out, because in the day of trouble, you need to come this far. You need to make sure that everything that's valuable to you is this far in. Because out there, you perish. In here, you're safe. And they're old boundaries. And they're boundaries that your parents and your grandparents and your great-great-grandparents and even these heroes that we read in the Bible thousands of years ago, they had the same boundaries. And they have the same tsunami stones. And so it's because there is danger in life. I'll just tell you, there is danger in life. And there's a reason the kids are in here today. There's a reason our graduates are doing. There's a reason that I'm speaking about this on graduation day, because in life, there is danger. There is. And I'm not just talking about physical danger. I'm talking about spiritual danger, mental danger, emotional danger. And of course, when we're talking about spiritual danger, we're talking about eternal danger. One day in eternity, you're either going to live or you will perish. And the way that you will live is if you have listened to the voice of God and you have followed his instructions that he put on some stones that are not to be moved, and you've gone into a place of safety. Jesus ran into this in the Old Testament. There are about 300 laws. God gave laws. Why did he give laws? He was given structure and a boundary, saying, this is how I want you to live. This is how I want you to go through life. This is the way that you can live in spiritual, emotional safety. Okay? And so the Old Testament had about 300 laws, and the religious leaders loved to debate them and loved to figure out their interpretation of them. They loved to figure out how these 300 laws could be changed, interpreted, how they could be applied to this situation, that situation. Maybe some new laws need to be created for these other things. And so this is the world that Jesus walked into. And one day, the Pharisees and the Sadducees were arguing. Those were the two distinctions in the religious leaders of the day. And they were arguing about the law, and Jesus was there. And they came to Jesus and they said, we have some questions for you. We're going to bring him into this. You know, they always love to try to bring Jesus in so they can maybe try to trap him in his words. It never worked out. Spoiler alert. But they always tried to have these discussions about the law with Jesus. They wanted to hear his interpretation of things, and Jesus, of course, would always cut straight to the heart of the matter. And in Matthew 22 and 34, we see this. We see the Pharisees talking about the Sadducees and talking to Jesus. And the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees. They gathered together. They said, look, he took care of the Sadducees. Now how are we going to trip him up? And so one of them, a lawyer, asked Jesus a question to test him. He says, teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? You tell me, what is the greatest commandment? Because there's 300 of them. So which one is the greatest? Which one is at the top? Which one is the most important? And Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then he says something very interesting. He says, on these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. In other words, all the stuff you're arguing about, all the things you're trying to interpret, they actually are all encapsulated by these two commandments. All these border stones that you see scattered around, they're all contained within these statements. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength, everything that you are. And then you're going to love your neighbor as yourself. That is the furthest boundary stones in the kingdom of God. Those are the tsunami stones of God. Everything else is contained inside of those. Those are the ones you don't want to go past. Those are the ones that you don't want to live outside of. Because there are many commandments and many interpretations. Just like in Christianity today, you have many denominations. We're a non-denominational church officially. Okay, but we all in this room come from different denominational backgrounds. There's some Catholic, there's some Pentecostal, there's some Baptist, there's some Presbyterian, Episcopal, all kinds of denominations are represented here because there's lots of different interpretations about different beliefs and different things that the Bible says about all kinds of things. But there are some encapsulating stones that surround all of that. And these are the borders that can never, ever be touched. You can argue about all the other ones, but there are some that you can never, ever touch. And they're the ones that Jesus talked about. And so beyond the stones that we're about to talk about, you will perish. And so especially those graduating today and proceeding into life, and those that are getting ready to enter their teenage years or have entered your teenage years, this is very, very important for you to hear. I know you look at me and you think, what an old man, why should I listen to you? You should listen to me because I'm old, that's why. I made it this far. Yeah, you want to make it at least as far as me, you should listen to me. Okay, so I'm asking you, I know you're normally doing something different on Sundays, but you're in here with me today, so I'm asking you to, at this point, begin to pay very close attention, because beyond these things that I'm talking about, you will perish. You'll be lost. But within them you'll be saved. Within them you will live. Within them there is safety. The first thing that Jesus said is, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your strength, all your soul, everything. So the boundary stone number one is there is a God. You can't go beyond that. You can't move that. The world would like to move it. You can't go beyond that. You can explore. You can go out and say, why do people think there's not a God? You can go to college and you can learn all the reasons that people think there's not a God. But you can't move that boundary stone in your life. You can't allow that to ever change. There is a God. And the reason why it's important is because you're going to come across one of life's most important questions. At some point in your life, you're going to face this question. Here it is. You ready? This is the defining point in your life right here. If you don't remember anything else about this message, you can remember this one question, how important it is to answer this question. It's this, 2 words, who cares? Who cares? You can literally answer anything with that question. Who cares? You can sit down in a college class and they'll start to tell you about all the philosophies of life, all the different ways that humanity has ever existed and all the things they do and why this is valuable. And you can just say, who cares? Who cares? Well, I care. Who cares that you care? Who cares? Because at the end of the day, if there is not a God, who cares? That's the end result. There's no, if you're the result of a universal accident, who cares? Well, I have dreams. Who cares? You don't understand all the things I want to accomplish. Who cares? Because you'll live from this point to that point, and then you'll be gone, and then you might as well write on your tombstone, who cares? Unless you were put here on purpose, unless you were designed, unless life has a meaning, unless there was some intention behind the creation of the universe, then who cares? And so that's ultimately the question that will provide meaning to your life or meaninglessness to your life. I just invented that word. And there are some very smart people in this world who thought that they could create their own meaning. That you'll hear the smartest atheists, they'll say things like, you'll say, well, where do you get meaning of? Oh, I create my own meaning. Well, what you've created is an illusion. You've given yourself an ability to go to sleep at night, is what you've done. But you've made it up. It's entirely fabricated in your mind. You have provided your own meaning. And so if they are dishonest with themselves, is what they are. Any meaning that we construct is an illusion. Because if you're not here for a purpose, on purpose, if you're not designed, if there's no intent behind your life, then there is no purpose and there is no meaning. So if you remove this landmark stone, if you move it, this idea that there is a God and that you are created with intentionality and a purpose in your life, if you move that one, there's literally no boundary anywhere. That is the demarcation between chaos and order. That is the demarcation between meaning and nihilism. You know what nihilism is? Fancy word you learn maybe when you get into college. Nihilism simply means that nothing has any meaning. Nothing is actually real. And so anything between a belief in God and nihilism is an illusion. Either there is a God or there's not. There is either meaning or there is no meaning. You don't get to make up the stuff in the middle. There is a stone that has been placed. When God said, let there be light, he made it known that he existed. And that stone can never be moved. And you can't go beyond that stone. If you allow your life to go beyond the stone of, I don't believe there is a God, your life will be filled with chaos, and when trouble comes, you will be lost. The second border stone, the second landmark is that you should focus your entire life on God. You should focus your entire life on God. Jesus said to love the Lord your God. So there is a God. But also he said you need to love him with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength, with everything you have, every part of your life. your love life, your financial life, your student life, your work life, every part of your life, your friend circle, everything, where you're going to live, all of that needs to be focused on God. All of it. Every last bit of it. And that is a stone that you cannot move, because it is possible to acknowledge the fact that, yes, I think that probably God exists, and then live your life like he doesn't. One author coined the phrase a Christian atheist. We have a lot of those. Oh, I believe in God. I'm a spiritual person, but you don't live like God actually ever told you to do anything. Look, if there's a God and he has an intent and a purpose for your life, then you might want to figure out what that is and live that way. Because that's a boundary stone that you don't want to go past. If a life without a belief in God is meaningless, then a life where you acknowledge that God exists but you don't do what he says is basically similarly, exactly futile. You've basically reached the same exact place. Jesus actually said, if you love me, keep my commandments. If you love me, if you profess to be a Christian, if you profess to be a follower of Jesus, then do what I'm telling you to do the way that I'm telling you to do it. And it's all in the book called the Bible. It's there. So do what I tell you to do. If you love me, do what I tell you to do. He doesn't say that to be a tyrant over you. He doesn't say that to just be like the big boss man so he can whack you over the head with a big stick whenever you mess up. That's not why he tells you that. He tells you that so that you can live the very best life that he has planned for you. Because Jesus doesn't want you to perish. He wants you to have everything that life has to offer as well. Real life, not the fake life. He has a life that's planned for you. And so you will actually come to this landmark over and over and over again in your life. You'll come to this boundary stone and you'll want to move it all the time, because you'll say, I need to make this decision. And then there's a little voice that says, what does God say about that? You go, and you'll get a chance to move the stone. You'll justify your sin. You'll say, no, I will pursue this relationship. Even though I know God's against it. God said, don't live with people before I'm married. Don't act like this before I'm married. He said, I love them, so I'm going to justify it. So I move the stone. And once you move one stone, the others just continue to go. Well, I know I shouldn't look at those things. I know I shouldn't listen to those things. I know I shouldn't hang around those people, and I move the stone. You see, I'm not just talking to the graduates, I'm talking to everybody today. Okay, we all, every day you come to the boundary stone. Do not move that boundary stone. Look in the Word of God and say, where is this stone at? What is the border? What is the boundary? What does God say? I will not go beyond that. I might want to. I do want to. I think I can justify it. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's there for a reason. It's there on purpose. It's there to save your life. I know you don't believe me, but it is. You need to make up your mind right now. Make up your mind right here and today that you want to live life to the fullest. And I don't mean in a sinful way. I mean live life, like really live. Because you can experience a lot in life, and you can lead a life that everybody thinks, oh, look how much adventure they're having, and you could be dead inside. I'm talking about real life. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about really living. I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about status. I'm talking about life. You need to make up your mind right now. I'm not going to move the stone of what God says is right and wrong. God put it there. I'm not going to move that. You only have your perspective. God has an eternal perspective. So follow his commands and live. God has seen it all. God has seen it all. Jesus says this about obeying his words. Matthew chapter 7, verse 24. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. Who wants to be wise? Anybody want to be wise in the room? Everybody should raise your hand because we all want to be wise. Every single person under the sound of my voice, no matter what your age is. You want to be wise? Yes, you do. You want to be wise. What's the opposite of wise? Foolish. Who wants to be foolish? Every hand down. Nobody wants to be foolish. Nobody wants to be looked at and say, that's a fool. Jesus said that if you want to be wise, then you hear the words of mine and do them. And you'll be like the wise man who built his house on the rock. You know what the rock is? Not the beach. It's up past the tsunami stones. The rain fell, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand below the tsunami stones. And when the rain fell and the floods came, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell. And great was the fall of it. If you do not heed my voice today, you're a fool. That's not my words. That's the words of Jesus. If you want to be a fool, walk out of here the same way that you walked in. If you want to be wise, listen to the voice of God today and say, God, I want to live. Help me to walk within your boundary stones. Yes. Because within the boundaries of Jesus and his life that he offers you, you will live, and you will live forever. You will. And then the third boundary that Jesus gives us is this. You should treat others as you would treat yourself. You should love others as you love yourself. It's very important. It's not all about you. Your life is not, you will come to this one again and again and again in your life. You'll come to that boundary stone and be like, I really want to make this about me right now. But it's never always about you. There's always others around. If life is only about you, well, you're living it wrong. You want to live a life to the fullest, you need to be around people that love you, you need to love others, and you need to love them the way that you want to be loved. Yeah, because it's entirely possible to live a life that believes in God and lives in a way that looks spiritually appropriate and then find yourself treating other people as less than yourself. It's entirely possible to be like biblically accurate, and I'm using air quotes for those listening to the podcast. It's impossible to be biblically accurate in the way that you're living and thinking, and yet still think more highly of yourself than you ought to think. And forget about taking care of other people. But serving God doesn't make you better than anybody else. When you serve and love God, what that means is that you're a safe place for other people. It means that you are an encouragement and a shelter for other people. Other people don't have to encourage you so much as you get to encourage other people. And it's not so much that you find meaning in life, it's that meaning just kind of lands in your life and you're fulfilled in life when you make it not about you. And that doesn't mean you don't get to experience a great life. It doesn't mean that you don't get to travel. It doesn't mean that you don't get to acquire wealth. It doesn't mean that you don't get to have joy and do fun things. In fact, you'll experience your greatest life when other people are involved in it and you're bringing other people along for the ride. It will. It will. You want to lift yourself up, lift somebody else up. That's what Jesus says. So it's the words of Jesus. This is the way you experience the greatest joy in life. This is the way you understand true wealth, when you understand that wealth isn't just about money, it's about others. Your true wealth can be measured when you look at your life and you see the others that are around you. That's the true wealth of life. That's what Jesus is saying. These are boundaries. These are landmark stones that God said, do not move these stones. And so for the young people today, I'm going to do just a little experiment real quick before we wrap up. I just want to do a little experiment. All the young people, if you're 25 years old and younger, I just want you to look around the room, okay? Not right now, in just a second. I want all your job is to look. Everybody else that's over 25 years old, I just want you to answer some questions for me by the raising of your hand, okay? All right. Here's the first question. Anybody in here have a PhD? PhD. Anybody you have a PhD back here? No, you don't have a PhD. No, not yet. We're on the way. Okay. Any PhD? Justin, I'll let you raise your hand for your wife. I know she has a PhD. Okay. She's not here today tending to the new baby, but I know we have a PhD in the house. Okay. She's part of the family. And Yashara, we give you a big shout out right now. Yeah, you're awesome. We love you. We can't wait to see you and little journey. And so we have a PhD in the house. How many in here have a master's degree in college? Raise your hand if you have a master's degree in college. Look around the room. Everybody 25 and under, raise your hand high if you have a master's degree. It's something to be proud of. You have a master's degree. Okay, that's pretty good. We have several. How many have a bachelor's degree? Put your hand up. Yeah, look at all this. We have some college educated people in the house here. How many have at least an associate's degree? Raise your hand. Yeah, we got some. We have that too. Okay. How many have a doctorate in the school of hard knocks and tough times and trouble Yeah. How many have experienced some things that brought you to each one of these boundary stones? How many of you have ever questioned, is there really a God in the middle of all this? Look around the room. Is there really a God? Yeah. How many have been brought to the stone that says, I want to do it my way and not God's way? How many times did that go wrong? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How many of us have found yourself isolated and alone, and the only way out is to surround yourself with others and serve others? Yeah. Look around the room, young people. Look around the room. Okay, you can put your hands down. I say all that because I want you to understand, sometimes when you're young, you think you know everything, and you think you're smarter than everybody else, but you don't have your degree yet. You don't have your master's degree. You don't have your PhD. You hadn't been through the life of hard knocks yet. You hadn't earned your degree in the school of tough times yet. Okay? But there's some people in this room that have been where you're going to go. And they've been to these boundaries. They've been to these rocks. They've had the chance to move them. And they've seen life. One more question. How many of you know people who lived your life outside these boundary stones and they ended up in a terrible place? Look around the room, young people. Okay? If you want life, and you want a joyful life, and you want a full life, live in these stones. You are a fool if you don't. You say, wow, Ben, you're kind of coming on strong today. I'm preaching for your soul today. That's why. What would happen if a man or a woman could gain the whole world and lose their soul? That's the Bible. You could lose the most important thing. I'm telling you how to save it. John 3:16, we know the verse. God so loved the world, he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. God's will for you is that you not perish, that you have eternal life. You can do that when you begin to believe in Jesus. Watch this. God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world. God's not out to condemn the world. God knows there's trouble coming. God knows there's punishment coming. God knows there's wrath coming. And he says, I didn't come here to condemn the world in Jesus. I came that you could be saved through me. I'm putting down some boundary stones. Yes. Whoever believes in him is not condemned. If you'll put your trust and faith in Jesus, if you'll do the things that I'm telling you today, then you will not be condemned. But if you do not believe, if you will not walk in these boundary stones, then you're condemned already. This is the judgment, Jesus says. What's the words of Jesus. This is the judgment. Light has come into the world. This is the judgment for you today. Light has come from this pulpit today and into your mind. Light has come into the world, and people love darkness rather than the light because their works were evil. This is the thing that will judge you right here, in this moment, right now. You get to make a decision. Every young person, every person that's not so young, you get to make a decision right now. Light has come from this pulpit. Light has come from the words that I'm saying to you. And you will either love the light and run to it, or you will hate the light and you will run from it, and that will be your judgment. This is your chance, because we're all on this road trip called life. We're all on this road trip. We're all having a grand adventure. We're all out seeing the sights and taking pictures and making memories. We're all doing it. But we're going to come to some borders. We're going to come to some borders. Is there a God? Yes, there is. Will I obey him, or will I do my own thing? Will I make life about me, or will I make it about others? You're going to come to those boundaries. And when trouble comes, you need to know where to run. When trouble comes, you run to those things. Because we'll go out and explore. We'll go out and ask questions, ask the hard. I'm not worried about hard questions. People ask hard questions of me and Christianity all the time. Well, if God is real, then why this? Well, why did God say that was wrong when this feels so good? Okay, whatever. People ask questions all the time. That's okay. I'm okay with that. Because I know where the safety is. I know you can go out and you can ask the questions, okay? You don't have to live that way. You can ask the questions. You can learn from the greatest minds. You can do all those things. But when things get hard, when trouble comes, because it will, live long enough and you'll find it. Safety's in these stones. Safety's in these stones. There is a God. I will obey him. I will make it about others. So I'm asking you to choose right now. We're going to go into a time of worship. I'm going to ask you to stand right now. And I'm going to ask you right now in this moment to go ahead and decide that when you arrive at those landmark stones, when you arrive at the boundaries and the borders of those places, that you will stay in the place of safety, that you will not move them. You will not move them. Keep them where they are. They were placed there long ago for your safety. God, give us a heart right now to serve you. God, open our minds right now that we can be filled with your sense of safety and your security, your love, your mercy, your peace, your salvation. We can turn to you right now and you would accept us. And you are our place that we can run in times of trouble. You are our strong and mighty tower. And so we come to you right now and ask you to deliver us. We ask you to guide us. We ask you to give us a place to step, a sure place to stand. We ask you, God, to come alongside us right now. There's lots of needs in this room. There's lots of questions in this room. There's lots of things we're going to walk into this week we didn't even know we were going to walk into, but we know where the boundary stones of safety are. So we're going to choose to run there. We're going to choose to live our lives there. If you need prayer for anything today as we worship, I'm going to invite you to just come down to the front. I will pray with you as you go on about your week. Or you can stay right where you are and you can just have a moment with God and just say, I want to find these boundary stones in my life and I want to dust them off. I want to clear away the vegetation that's grown there. I want to make sure they're nice and bold and clear in my life. I will not go beyond these things. It's a place of safety. I love you. Let's worship together before we go.